An Appeal to My Muslim Brothers and Sisters by Mario V. Melendez, January 13, 2015, in reaction to the Charlie Hebdo Muslim terrorist attack on January 7, 2015 in Paris, France, and posted on his Facebook page 6 days later, advocating for Islamic reformation. This is part 3. While there are parts I'm ashamed of as a Christian and Catholic, there are even more parts I'm extremely proud of. Out of the many, I'll just mention a few, starting with its ability to climb down from its high, perch and fall on its knees, demean itself and beg for forgiveness, as when Pope John Paul. The second acknowledged all of the Church's past transgressions through history, like the ones I just mentioned, and expressed remorse for all of them on the eve of the third millennium. The Pope made it clear that the apology was unconditional, whether it was committed directly by the Church or committed by its sons and daughters, quote unquote. Whether by design or not, this unconditionality is actually a double-edged sword, as I'll explain later. I'm also particularly proud of the fact that from my faith sprung St. Augustine, the 5th century theologian and philosopher who ironically expounded on the merits of the separation of church and state, the only model for governance that guarantees religious minorities equal protection. Nothing is more chilling to the individual and more corrupting to the collective than a religion propped up by the state or the state propped up by a religion. The Inquisition and political Shintoism are just two of the many empirical evidence of that. In the former, the state and the church ganged up on hapless individuals whose conscience dared to question one or the other. In the latter, the same duo emboldened a whole-body politic to blindly embark on military adventurism that dragged the world into a war. This is why I'm no fan of Sharia law, political Islam, caliphates, Islamic monarchies and theocracies, especially those with nuclear ambitions, and neither are many a moderate Muslim. As an aside, of the three religions, Judaism is probably the only one that can come before God without blood on its hands. Throughout its nearly 4,000 years of existence, not a single war was ever fought to spread it, nor a single colonization and subjugation of whole peoples ever done to spread it. On the contrary, it has consistently been on the receiving end of persecution through the centuries and up to this very day, from the Crusades to the great diaspora that scattered its children, to the Catholic Inquisition and witch hunts, to ghettoification, segregation, forced conversions and pogroms in Europe, to the centuries-old anti-Semitism and synagogue burning, to present-day intifadas, anti-Zionism and explicit threats of annihilation of the State of Israel by its neighbours. Add to that their enslavement in ancient Egypt, depending on where you are on the reliability of religious books as historical evidence. Also, the terrorist attacks, like those I opened this essay with, are routine occurrences in Israel, a small country 1/20th the size of California. And then, of course, there's the Holocaust, an abomination so incomprehensible it defies all logic. The worst that can be said about these people is that they're Christ killers and that they kidnap and murder Christian and Muslim children for their blood for Hebrew Passover rituals, both of which are calculated lies designed to keep anti-Semitism alive forever. So, to the aforementioned ordeals Judaism and its children have endured, add the pernicious Christ-killer racial slur and the so-called blood libel I'm very mindful of, and I don't mean to gloss over the unfortunate 1948 Palestinian diaspora being blamed on the Jews. But the most reliable historical evidence seems to indicate that is attributable to the fog of war instead of a systematic government policy of the Jewish state as it was emerging into existence with all the attendant chaos and confusion. Indeed, it would have been absurd for an emerging state desperate for international acceptance to sabotage and tarnish its own image to the world. Incidentally, anti-Semitism reared its ugly head yet again when last week's Paris terrorist attack spilled over to a kosher grocery and 4 Jews were targeted for killing precisely because they were Jews. It's probably not by coincidence that France is a country where anti-Semitism is reportedly on the rise in recent years. I mentioned fratricide earlier, when patricide would have been more apt, given the comparative ages of these religions. In human terms, if Judaism were a man pushing 40 years old, Christianity has just turned 20, while Islam is a mere 14-year-old teenager. That makes their relationship unlike brothers, but more akin to father and sons, making the persecution by these youngsters against their elder even more appalling. And for what, exactly? Religious hate, pure and simple. I also mentioned the Pope's apology earlier and the fact that it was unconditional. I didn't mince words on what I consider to be my religion's greatest moral failures. Whether or not Islam's own religious hierarchy can show the same honesty as the Pope and apologise for its failings remains to be seen. But whether or not ordinary Muslims can do the same frank introspection with their religion as I just did with mine, the prospects are much brighter. Earlier, I enumerated what I personally consider to be my religion's 4 most egregious sins. That is the Inquisition, slavery, colonialism and the Holocaust. I invite any Muslim familiar with Islam's history to take a long, hard, honest look and say if any of those 4 sins looks familiar, or if indeed all of them do. I appeal to my Muslim brothers and sisters to please do an honest-to-goodness introspection, no matter where it takes you. And while you're at it, I wish you'd also squarely confront a famously unresolved historical issue that is the Armenian genocide, where 1.5 million Christians were killed in the Islamic Ottoman Empire 100 years ago. It did happen, right? And if there's a religion to blame for it, what religion exactly is that? And what is that genocide's connection to the Holocaust? The Holy Quran says if you kill one person, it is as if you kill the whole humanity, and that's all very fine. But with all due respect, I submit that all religions should be judged not only by the profound and sublime words of their holy books, but more fairly and more realistically by the deeds and the misdeeds of their followers. Deeds still speak louder than words. Pope John Paul II obviously agrees, which can only be the reason why his apology was unconditional and didn't differentiate between the sins committed directly by the Catholic Church and those committed by its sons and daughters, quote unquote. But, as I said earlier, it is a double-edged sword, because that standard of accountability for Christianity ought to be the same standard of accountability for Islam if we are to be fair. That's the end of Part 3. Click on the link on screen to play Part 4.